Fear in the Fungal Forests of Fomalhaut, Part 1 by Sven Bertelsen. Sven's morning mail was waiting for him on his desk in the manor. Most of it was the usual mix of problems and requests from the residents of the kingdom. He started scanning the letters. Sorting them was his first task. The baskets on his desk were marked according to how he would handle them, with the visit, with a note, request more details, refer to Lola, and finally, if they warranted it, the large round wastebasket next to the desk. As he neared the bottom of the pile, one particular letter caught his attention. It was from his old university where he'd studied experimental polybionomy. Usually they were asking for money to help impoverished students. Not this time. "Dear Sven," wrote his old professor, "we have an urgent project that needs your particular skills. The return of our expedition to Fomalhaut is overdue. They were exploring the fungal forests there, and we are worried that the fungus hunters may be holding them prisoner. We have a transport leaving for Fomalhaut at the end of the week, and would be greatly appreciated if you could join the relief expedition as an advisor. Your knowledge of polybionomy, as well as your well-known prowess with archaic weapons, make you the ideal choice. If you are able to help us, please be at the Tavern of the Narwhals in Stonesea by Thursday evening. You'll only be able to take what you can carry with you. Yours fraternally, John Catramain." Most people knew of the fungus forests, if only because of the powerful medicines that were produced from fungi gathered there, but very few had ever been to that blighted land. Sven went over to his library bookshelves and pulled a large leather-bound folio from them and laid it on the folio stand. The ancient map of Fomalhaut and the few facts about it took up only half the sheet. In times long past, the land of Fomalhaut was a pleasant wooded island off the northern coast of the Nubican continent. Its people had been noted for their high ethical standards and advanced knowledge of botany, which made their land prosperous by cultivating rare woodland fungi. The pressure from traders to increase production of those fungi had resulted in a civil war between those who wished to retain their traditional methods and others who wished to use forbidden methods. During that war, spores of highly aggressive giant fungi produced by the forbidden methods had escaped. Within a few short years the fungi had taken over, killing the local flora and most of the fauna, along with any of the inhabitants who tried to stay. All that was left on Fomalhaut was a fungal forest, a few very resistant creatures, and some tombs and monuments that the fungi could not digest. Some families, descended from the original inhabitants, lived on the Nubican coast, protected from the spread of most of the spores by the 50 miles of salt water between them and the island. Some of these families made a living by risking their lives visiting their former home to harvest fungi and bring them back to the mainland after making sure they had no viable spores. They were very protective of their monopoly, and anyone landing on Fomalhaut without permission was in grave danger from them, as well as the fungi. The fungus hunters maintained that this blockade was not to prevent others trading, but to stop the spread of spores to the mainland. Perhaps there was some truth in both views. There was very little other information. Only a mention that modern weapons had proved unreliable there, as the fungi found both gunpowder and other explosives very palatable. That would explain John's reference to archaic weapons. Sven had no doubt that he would be joining the expedition, partly as a debt of honour to his alma mater, but also as an adventure in its own right. It had been so long since he'd spent much time outside the kingdom. Lola would be concerned for his safety, but she could handle any problems here, as she always did. Down in the manor armoury, Sven surveyed the racks holding his weapon collection. Anything with wooden or other organics parts he dismissed. They would not fare well. Finally he chose. First, the old great sword called Black Blight. Its black serrated blade could cut the toughest armour or materials, and below its claw-shaped guard a woven metal grip shaped like a mushroom, entirely appropriate. Next, a steel and iron crossbow strung with wire and a clutch of iron bolts. Finally, a small all-metal tomahawk, good for close-quarter fighting, throwing, and also a useful tool. Clothing was Sven's next problem. Most cloth would be eaten quickly. He did have some old fibrite clothes and boots from his university days. They were supposed to be rot-proof. That and his lightest chainmail would have to do. Well-sealed containers for food and water, sterilizing tablets, antifungal salve, face masks, the list grew and grew. After much sorting into piles, weighing, discarding, replacing, he had a pack he could carry, just. Back at his desk he composed a note for Lola. How long should he say he'd be away? Allow a week for travel to Fomalhaut? A week there, a week back, and a week or more for luck? 5 weeks? That would be best. Better not have a worry for a few days. Now to summon the ostler and get a good horse saddled and a pack horse too. He would need to travel quickly to make it to Stonesea on time. Fear in the Fungal Forests of Fomalhaut. Part 2 by Sven Pertelson. The road to Stonesea passed through unremarkable countryside. Even the tavern Sven spent the night at was best forgotten. The happy traveller was not well named. The food was bland, the beer was flat, the rooms cramped, the beds too hard, and the breakfast greasy. Perhaps it was named because travellers were happy to leave it. Even the horses seemed glad to leave the stables. It was just after noon on Thursday that Sven caught his first sight of the port of Stonesea. It lay at the edge of a small bay surrounded by cliffs. The road led right up to the cliff edge and stopped by an A-frame crane leaning out over the cliff. Sven dismounted and looked over the edge. Far below him was a ramshackle hut and a platform attached to the crane by tarred ropes. A badly written sign next to the old ship's bell held prices for men, horses, cattle and other goods, and the instruction to ring the bell long and hard. Sven complied. A few minutes later a small bucket was hauled to the top of the cliff with the words, "Pay here and ring," painted on it. Counting out the coins, he dropped them into the bucket and rang the bell again. The bucket rattled its way down, and then, with an alarming creaking and groaning, the A-frame flexed as the main rope began to move. Finally, the platform reached the cliff top, and after hooding the horses and tethering them on the platform, he rang the bell again and endured a slow, swaying descent to the port below. The rest of Stonesea was as decrepit and decayed as the means of descending the cliff. The town had most certainly seen better days. Perhaps a more reassuring means of getting into the port would have helped. The tavern he was seeking was the only one in town, and sited right by the docks. A single twisted narwhal tusk above the front door was its only sign. Inside, though, it was warm and welcoming, with the scent of beer, pipe smoke, and roasting meat. Sitting at one of the tables, Sven spied his old professor and a small group of men in travelling clothes. He was warmly greeted, and arrangements were soon made for a room for himself and stabling for his horses. With a welcome pint of ale in his hand and plate of meat and bread inside him, Sven learned as much as he could about the previous expedition, what plans had been made for this relief trip to Fomalhaut. Sven's companions on this trip numbered 4. From the university there was the professor, John Catramain, and also Gilliam Lane, a mycologist. Issa ibn Sani al-Takri, whose family originated from Fomalhaut and knew their local customs and could act as an interpreter. Finally, there was Hrafni Halfthison, who was the designer, owner and captain of their transport, the Skithblathir. John seemed quite smug when Sven asked more about the transport that had been arranged to get them to the fungus forest, led him over to a small window overlooking the harbour. There was something decidedly odd about the ship that John pointed out. It seemed very lightly built, and rather than sail it had what looked like windmills mounted on short masts, and two very large bulbous piles of cloth on the fore and rear decks. Sven watched. The piles of cloth grew slowly larger, until he recognized what he was seeing. It was an airship. Hrafni explained. The name of the ship, Skithblathir, was from Norse mythology. It was the name given to the best of all possible ships that belonged to Freya, and it was said it could be folded up to fit in a pocket. While his ship was not that small, it did get larger when the gas bags were inflated. It was the fastest and safest way to get to the fungus forests, over land and sea, and above the heads of any fungus hunters who might try to block their way. They could also search the forests from above for signs of the missing expedition. After a toast of hot mulled wine to the success of their expedition, Sven headed to his room to get some sleep before they departed at first light. This might turn out to be a very amazing expedition.